Hello, Sean.
So here we are, episode 6 of Studio Life.
Studio Life, indeed.
So we normally start off with some news. So the news this particular episode, it's not new news necessarily, but it might be to you. For some time now, I've been doing mastering and I've been advertising my services online and mentioning them here and there on this show and the other show we do, Is It Shit? Well, we've recently added to that, and Dan is now available for mixing. So if you go to the website, which the link will be down below, you can book either one of us for mixing or for mastering. Dan has a long list of credits in mixing house music and full band music, anything really, isn't it?
It is anything audio at all, really. We are based in all things studio. So whether you want some advice with a podcast, whether you want to get your vocals sitting more pleasantly in your mix, whether you want your bottom end pounding more heavily. I love to heavily pound bottom end. We want to hear from you, basically. So click the links at the bottom of the video here. Check out the adverts on our Insta and go and have a look at the packages on the website.
Do that. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can hire us to do for you, give you more free time. We've got a little bit of experience in doing this kind of stuff.
A little bit.
Anyway, that brings us to plug-in news. So, first of all, plug-in news this week, we're going to talk about the TB Pro Audio D-Sec, which is something we've discussed in our main show, Is It Shit? Which may or may not be out yet, we don't know yet. And it's very similar to Soothe in that it's dynamic resonance suppression. It's very clever. It has an AI section within it. It can listen to your track, analyze it, and basically remove harshness or offensive parts of the frequency spectrum. Now you can get involved in that and tell it what you want it to look at, what part or what parts you want it to leave alone, or you can use the AI function and it will do it for you. But it's
happened already, hasn't it, with the AI thing? We're talking about
it
like it's already part of part of the landscape.
You know, there's obviously doing this. We get to go through a lot of plugins, and every now and again one comes along. It's like, hello, this one's a game changer. This one's really going to change how I work, and this is one of those. I absolutely love it.
With all your new mastering stuff.
Yeah, well, it's just been incredibly useful. There's a surprising amount, well, maybe not surprising. There's a surprising or unsurprising amount of mixes that come through with a very cluttered and harsh mid-range. It's just because that's where the vocal is. Quite often it's where the guitars are or the main sample is. It's where the snare is. There's a whole bunch of stuff fighting for dominance. And if you're not careful, if you get the odd red light on your channel, in your DAW, by the time your mix is done, it can sound a bit harsh and it's a bit unpleasant on the ears. And it will just deal with that in a very pleasant way. Same for basically some very clever de-essing. If the high frequencies are getting a bit crazy, this will dynamically deal with them in a way that doesn't sound like you've done it.
Very cool. Go and check out the full Is It Shit episode of the DSEQ.
Yeah, and go and have a look at TB Pro Audio's page. They've got some great plugins there, and some of them are free.
Some of them are free. Yeah. Brings us thrillingly, excitingly on to...
Where were we?
So, ladies and gentlemen, in accordance with the recent popularity of us listing the appropriate apparatus for performing certain technical audio tasks in numerical order, I would like to present to you, snappy title, I think.
Very snappy title.
I would like to present to you the top 5 mastering equalization pieces of plugin software.
You couldn't have said that with more words if you'd have tried.
You're welcome.
Cool.
Get paid by the word.
I wish we did.
Yes. So, bringing us in at a sultry number 5, Sean.
It is the Pulsar Massive Passive, or the Pulsar
Manly Passive Massive.
Yeah. We looked at this in Is It Shit a little while ago. Lovely sounding EQ. Not very surgical, more of a broad, let's sweeten the mix kind of thing. But yeah, really nice plugin.
Can I ask? I've got 3 questions.
Go for it.
Is it manly?
Manly make the original hardware, not the plugin.
Is it massive?
It's massive.
Is it passive?
It is passive.
Do you like squeezy cheesy peas?
I don't like squeezy cheese.
Like cheese?
And I don't like squeezy peas. I like peas and cheese. Not
squeezy cheesy peas.
I don't want them squeezy.
Brilliant! Okay, which brings us round to number 4. In at number 4 of our list of favourite mastering EQs.
Is the PSP Master Q2. PSP audio, as you may know, we're quite big fans. I've known them guys a long time. They make some really, really nice stuff. And the Master Q2 doesn't get as much love as it should. It's a really, really good mastering EQ. And unlike the Manley Massive Passive situation, it can do very surgical things. So if you have issues with your mix, this is the EQ to get in there and to notch things out or to do what you've got to do. Very surgical, very well spec'd, lovely plug-in.
Very exciting.
Yep.
First on the podium, in at number 3.
It's the Frameworks AMEC 250, which we reviewed a while ago. I've been using it for quite a few months now, maybe even a year. Quite a long time. It's modelled on the Sontec MEP 250EX, and it has an added mid-side section. It's very, very nice. I use it quite a lot in mastering. The mid-side part of it is brilliant. It really gives you the opportunity to dial in. Quite often I'll use it if a vocal isn't quite loud enough when you're mastering. You can find it in that mid-section and just do a tiny little like half a dB boost and boom, the vocal's there. Love it.
Do. Number 2.
You should have your own game show. It's an SPL PQ
Email
from
at the end
Brainworks.
of the... sorry, just put email at the end of the...
Just advertising
Yeah.
your services as a game show.
Game show host, yeah.
Why not? Danny Dye does it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Brainworks
Not quite sure how to take
SPL PQ. No, I don't know how you should take that either. Anyway, yes, the SPL PQ is in at number 2. This sounds a lot like the hardware. Very, very nice EQ. Can be very surgical, or you can do some quite gentle stuff with it. Brilliant interface, looks very much like the hardware, works like it, sounds like it. Really good job by Brainworks, this one.
Which means we've got the Logic 5 stock EQ
In at number 1.
in at number 1.
That would be a shock.
Yeah.
That would be a shock.
So our favourite,
Always
number 1,
special
primary.
In at 1, it's the Pulsar 8200, which is the modelled version of the GML 8200.
Yep.
I will say it's not massively surgical. It is more of a general, sweetening EQ. But I've found myself using it over and over again. It sounds exactly like the hardware with the added benefit of the mid-side and a de-esser as well. I really, really like it. To be fair, I would like this and the SPL PQ. I would use both of those all the time. That would be a good combination. But yeah, the winner is the Pulsar 8200.
There we go. Check out for links to the reviews in the comments section just below. And that moves us neatly on to...
Retro Talk. Retro Talk. Retro Talk. All right, so Retro Talk is the bit of the show where we discuss gear that we used to own or maybe we used to use, something we look back on fondly and we miss and maybe we wish we could get it again, that kind of thing. So let's start with you, Mr. Peters. Where are you going this week?
Well, we always discuss where I'm going to go because I'm not somebody that looks backwards often. What, don't you like to think? No, it's a sore neck.
Is that what I took your driving
Don't
license
you
off
like,
you?
don't you like looking into the past? No, sore neck, you see.
Yeah. Well, I've seen you drive.
You've seen me drive, yeah. So I struggle a bit with the retro talk, but we were talking about Yamaha O2Rs.
We were.
I don't know why, and the younger sibling. Do you remember the O3D?
I remember the O3D, the weird one that you could plug a mouse into.
You could plug a mouse into, and you swirled
had
the
a
button,
a
and
jog
it did
wheel.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was going to mention those, and it was also one of the first things I ever saw do Vegas mode.
Oh, with the faders.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything does that now.
Yes. Yeah.
Even the SSL UF1 does it, but it's only
Only
got
got
one
one
fader,
fader.
so it's not very impressive. Just goes up and down a few times.
There's 15 other ones, UHF ones, all around the world somewhere.
Everyone's going, why is my
Why
fader
fader
keep
going
up
like
and
that?
down?
Yeah,
Yes.
so the weird thing was when I worked on an O2R, we worked on tape with it. It
Yeah.
plugged into a tape machine. So
I used to pair it up with an ADAT.
yeah,
That was the package that I was going out recording with in those days, an O2R and an ADAT.
Crazy thing.
Horrendous. Really.
Crazy thing. You're saying that they were becoming popular again.
Well, the O2R properly fell out of favour,
did, yeah.
obviously, because Dawes came along. And,
Phone.
I mean, I saw one going for less than $2,000 not that long ago.
I think they're like 300 quid, aren't they?
They might be now, yeah. But
Yeah.
I've seen recently the price has been going up again. I think people are starting to realise that Ada preamps weren't awful. The routing options and what you could do with the signal inside were pretty impressive.
Pretty good, yeah.
You know, and if you need a workhorse mixer at the centre of a whole bunch of stuff,
Yeah.
it was good for that.
It was,
A
yeah.
relatively small
a little
footprint.
sub-mixery sort of vibey thing, wasn't it? You did see them doing that quite. Tell you what, I worked with Pendulum for years, and we used a DM1000
Yeah.
with
They were nice.
those Aviom cards.
Ah, yeah. Okay, so the Cat 5 everywhere.
Yeah, Cat 5 everywhere with the digital routing on the inside.
Yeah, of course.
In ears. Yeah. So it was early personal mixing on on in ears.
Well, I will still always remember the O2R fondly, just because obviously I've mixed live on one quite a few times, and it was the first time that you could store a mix.
Yes.
You could store a live mix, go away, let another engineer mix the support act and the compare whatever else was going on, and then you'd come back, recall your mix, and off you went. And that wasn't a thing before that. You got some tape and you taped over your channels on your analog console and leave it alone.
Beginning of the end, mate. That was when we actually had to start doing work and staying sober and stuff.
Yeah. Bad times.
It was, yeah.
well.
So maybe that is maybe retro. So it doesn't say it has to be positive.
Doesn't say it has to be positive. No, that's
Bloody O2R.
Bloody O2R.
Yeah, there you go. So that's it. O2R, Yamaha O2R. Yamaha have gone on to make seriously. They've always had a workhorse console, haven't they? Though,
Always. Yeah. They're always there. The PM5D live console. That was my favourite console. I toured with that for years. We saw one on a gig only a couple of months ago for the first time in a long time, and me and the other engineer were like, they sound good.
And did they?
Yeah.
They did. The other
instantly,
one,
we're like, wow, that's got a really good sound to
They
it.
were the pinky one with the pink pink faders or something. M7CL. They were Yamahas as well.
The
weren't
M7CL was the one that looked like a lighting desk.
Yeah, because it was just
Because
all
it was
faders.
rows of faders. It didn't look like it was an audio desk at all.
That's right. Yeah.
I wasn't so keen on those, but yeah.
No. They were a bit more monitory. They were a bit more my end of the multi-core.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Weird. Okay, so for my retro talk, we're going to go all the way back to 1986.
Oh, yours is a really exciting, interesting one. 1986.
1986, Casio, who up till that point had made some dodgy home keyboards and some all right digital watches, suddenly decided to make pro audio gear. And they launched a synthesizer, and they launched a sampling drum machine, and the drum machine was called the RZ1. And I couldn't afford one at the time because it was brand new, exciting technology, and I was at school. But a few years later, very early 90s, I think maybe 91, something like that, I managed to pick one up secondhand, and it became the centerpiece of my studio at home for a little while when I was like 18, 19 or whatever, because it was awesome. It sampled and it was a drum machine, and I've got one right here.
Look at that.
Check out that beast. Yeah, the Casio RZ1. Now, I've been through some weirdness with this because I owned it back then. I then sold it when I got something better. I then missed it, bought it back again in the early 2000s, got fed up with owning it, sold it again. And then I found one online again last year, which was in good nick, so I bought it back. And do you know what? It's wired up, it's part of my system, and I use it quite a lot.
Do you?
Yeah, because it's just crunchy samples.
Sounds
it's
good,
like,
yeah.
I think it's 12-bit. It might even be 8-bit. I think it's 12-bit. And so it's got just under 1 second of sampling. So that's enough to have 4 drum hits. So I've got on this at the moment permanently, I've got a 909 kick, a DMX snare, a DMX kick, and a 909 clap. And I'll use that for an album, and then I'll change them up. But I mean, the onboard sounds are very, very iffy.
Yeah.
They're not great. But what it did have...
So you use it for the sampling then?
I use it for sampling, but there's everything has its own output, and everything has its own fader. So that changes everything, because they all go into separate inputs on my sound card, and everything can be treated separately. So those iffy kicks, snares, and toms, when they're processed, are not iffy anymore. So all of a sudden, it's become a way more usable drum machine. The other thing that's really weird is the timing is pretty iffy.
Yeah.
But I've learned to love it.
Yeah.
It gives things a
Yeah,
real groove.
yeah.
And I can't replicate that.
You find the loop that works and keep that one.
Yeah, I can't replicate it. So this drum machine has a rather interesting history because it kind of... There's not many hits that were recorded with a Casio RZ1. And the ones that were, you can't tell because people were using the sampling feature.
Right.
But one album that did use it exclusively was 3 Feet High and Rising by De La Soul, which was one of my favourite albums back then and still is. And Prince Paul, the producer, basically used the sampling on this for a lot of the samples. And then if you listen to the album, you can hear the actual drum sounds all over it. It's very cleverly sort of buried in there. It's like, it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb, like a slightly iffy drum sound like it was at the time. But it's got a sound. And there's also, what else was it? There was another hip hop album that used it a lot, Soul to Soul. And this is the reason I bought mine in the first place. Jazzy B posed on front of a magazine called Music Technology, which we had in the UK when I was at school. He sat on the front cover holding one of those.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was a massive fan, which is what prompted me to buy it.
But-
I then read the article and he said, I've never used it. It's not on the album at all, which I realised after I heard it. But still, yeah, I love it. It's a really interesting bit of kit. I love the fact that you're so limited to those very short cut-off samples. There's no control other than you put it into record, and then when it hears audio, it starts recording, and then it cuts off. And it's like, if you recorded a cymbal, it would just be a harsh cut-off at the end. If the snare, it's such a noisy preamp on it that it's like white noise mixed in with the snare, which is kind of why it's cool.
What you needed, yeah.
So yeah, there you go, the Casio RZ1.
I'm going to have to start preparing something a bit more interesting for these little retro talk sections.
There's a lot of interesting stuff out there in the world, isn't there?
Yeah. Yeah. I just need to prepare and find some of it.
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe I'm not interesting.
Maybe you're not interesting. No, we've had this discussion, Dan. You're definitely not interesting.
Yeah, I'm definitely not interesting.
No, that wasn't the discussion I meant. I meant we discussed this, I think, in one of the previous episodes, that my career started in the era where there was a lot of gear.
Yeah, yeah.
You had to have a lot of gear, whereas yours started in the era of the laptop.
Yeah.
You didn't have to own loads of gear. You needed a laptop and some monitors.
Yes. Yeah, pretty much still.
Therefore, it's a completely different sort of situation.
There you go, people.
Anyway, that was Retro Talk, and that must mean it's time for this week's
Hot Topic.
It's Hot Topic. Today's Hot Topic. We're gonna go deep. How deep? Well, I don't know. I guess we'll just see how deep it goes.
Today's Hot Topic, Dan.
Yes, Sean.
We have both worked equally as much, I would say, in both the studio side of things and also live world. We've toured, I've done front of house, you've done front of house, you've done monitors, all that kind of stuff. Very similar industries, but not the same. What can the live world learn from the studio world, and what can the studio world learn from the live world?
Well, we were talking about this very briefly, weren't we? What was the first thing we said that the studio world could learn from the live world?
Coiling cables.
Coiling cables, yeah.
Do you know what? The first ever live gig I did professionally as an engineer, I had to mic up a drum kit on a big stage. First proper gig I'd done. And the guy, one of the other engineers, I could just see him at the side of the stage looking at me with his mouth open, like, because I was plugging in all the drum mics and just dropping the cables wherever they fell. I did the whole kit, 10 mics or whatever, walked off and he went, "What's that?" I went, "What do you mean?" "What are you doing with the cables?" I went, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "You can't leave them like that." I'm like, "Why not?" Because in the studio, you plug something in, you plug the other end in. Who cares where the cable goes?
We have our chat with it. We talk about this with Warren, don't we? Use the same. Yeah.
So yeah, that was a bit of a lesson. He was like, "No, you coil every cable," and he's like, "Your slack goes at that end, the coil goes at this end. Then if someone trips on it, or if someone needs to pull more slack, they can." And it's like, wow, that's the whole thing. I've never ever had that. Been in the studio for 10 years. No one's ever told me off for my cable etiquette.
Yeah.
And there was loads of things to learn. Like in a studio, obviously we work with XLRs, we work with jacks, and Bantam plugs for patch bays. That's kind of it. Didn't see any other cables. First live gig, someone was like, "Hand me the EP6." I'm like, "The what?" Or go and plug in the soccer pegs.
NL4s.
The what? What are you talking about? And there's all these other cables which didn't exist in the studio. So there's that side of it. And then I don't know about you, but it was really weird in that over the course of the end of the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s, the live world was just permanently advancing through technology.
Yeah.
There was digital desks came in. There was digital networking.
Yeah.
And, do you remember Soundweb?
Yes.
And all this stuff was coming in.
Probranet. Is that the same? Was that the?
I don't know if it was the same, but there was all these digital desk manufacturers. Remember Innovasons? And there was all these digital desks and digital networking systems. Everything was getting very high tech. And Studio World was just not doing
No.
it. We had some very iffy studio desks that were early digital things. But everything was still...
What were they? What were the sort of early sort of era digital?
So we had the Neve Capricorn, I think it was called, which was the big, large format Neve. Sony had something, I can't remember, it was called the DM something or other. Everyone brought out a large format digital console. Oh, there was Euphonics.
Yeah.
The Euphonics studio console, you had to do a course for them to let you use it.
Jesus.
Which was crazy because there was nothing much to it. But yeah, there was this weird reluctance to embrace digital in the studio world in the same way. And live is still doing it now. It's like everybody uses full recall pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
Everything is digital.
Yeah. Which is weird, isn't it? Because you're seat of the pants. I guess that's the thing, isn't it? With gigs, that's what I've always thought is fucking up is far worse. But at least it's gone. It happens and it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully.
Well, it's a very different sort of discipline, isn't it? Because in the studio, you've got almost endless amounts of time to tweak and to get things right. Live world, you haven't. It's
technically, but in performance wise, they've both got to be right, haven't they? As an engineer, you can't get the perfect performance and then say sorry.
No. You get one chance, but it does have to be right. Yeah. It's so different. But the kinds of people, there's a few engineers I know that do both, but generally, certainly back when I was starting to work in the live stuff, no one had come from studio.
No.
It was totally different. Two different disciplines. People didn't cross over, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got some very, very difficult moments happen just because, people ask, where have you been? What have you been doing? And you tell them you've worked in a studio.
And they're like, oh, right. Yeah. Well, my studio experience, obviously, we spent a lot of it in production houses in London, in the East End mainly.
Yeah.
Ghost producing and remixing for DJs.
Yeah.
So sat in studios that were huge studios, and we were just talking. It was basically the early iMacs, an O2R very often, an enormous set of wedges, enormous set of monitors, and a beautiful studio vocal booth, but very little else. It was all when it was starting to move it into the box.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
Interesting. And now, even though there are digital systems that enable you to mix kind of in the box live, that's not really going anywhere, is it?
Well,
I've seen a bit of it, but it never really takes off. People like a solid front of house desk.
Enough, the only people that I find like that are studio engineers. Again, Warren is a big fan of his iPad controlled live recording system.
Yeah.
I suppose, but
I'm mixing a big gig in front of thousands of people. I want a mixing desk that was designed to be a mixing desk.
Yeah. Yeah. But not you don't want it to be controlled like the.
No. I did an iPad control live desk for a little while, and it's just too scary.
What were those chaps who went down in the sub? They controlled with just a.
Let's not go there.
No.
Let's not go there.
No, I know
just
what
too
you
risky.
mean.
Just too risky. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it again.
So what else could they learn? If you were in I don't know.
Nothing.
No, nothing.
Nothing. These days, everyone has to really do a bit of everything. If you want to survive as a sound engineer,
that's a fair point.
You've just got to do a bit of live, bit of studio, be a sound engineer, be an all-rounder.
Yeah.
Probably helps to know a bit of video. Probably helps to know a little bit about everything. Hang on. While we're here, so a few things. First of all, obviously, subscribe. There's the Instagram Studio Life 101. There's the Patreon. There's the merch stand. Also, we have a new show coming very soon called the Studio Life Studio Invasion, which is where we come to you. We come to your studio. You show us what gear you're using, how you're using it. Show us your plugins, show us your monitors, show us whatever it is you want to talk about. We then help you with any issues you're having, whether it's mixing, mastering, some kind of studio setup, acoustic problems, whatever it is. and we'll talk about it, and we'll make a show out of it, and you can tell us whatever it is you're working on. So get in touch. If you're interested in that, leave a comment, get in touch somehow, and we will come to you.
And make cups of tea.
Yeah. Well, you make the cups of tea.
Good idea, Sean.
I think that's a better plan.
See you later.
See you soon.